Right, you've made it through the first unit, which is our short story unit, and that means you are ready to tackle longer work, like a novel. So here's our first novel, Their Eyes Are Watching God. This is written by Zora Neale Hurston, and you should recognize her name because she wrote the story Sweat, which you read earlier in the quarter. The novel itself was published in 1937, and Hurston is especially known for her studies in anthropology. She would go and observe people, societies, and just write about it. She wrote this book in about 7 weeks, which is fairly fast for writing a novel. It's a historic example of Black fiction. It's got some feminist undertones, and it follows the protagonist of Janie. She is on a journey to find herself, and intrinsically linked to finding herself is the search for true love. Once she finds one, she'll find the other. The setting is the South in the early to mid 1900s. So think about this time period and this setting. Early to mid 1900s. So the Civil War, 1860s, Civil Rights, 1960s. Kind of puts us right in the middle. Early to mid 1900s, we've got the Jazz Age in the 1920s up in the North. We've got the Great Depression happening shortly after that. We're in the South, and of course this means there was definitely racism, there was inequality. Life was not easy. We see that Janie's grandmother, we learn throughout the novel, grew up actually during slavery, and she let that experience basically shape who she is. Janie, on the other hand, has had much of an easier time, and so she does not understand where her grandma is coming from. So there's these differences in their philosophies, and because Janie is raised by her grandmother, they kind of clash from time to time. You do want to understand that this is a frame story. So when you read chapter 1, you're thrown into the novel in the middle of things. You don't understand what's happening. Janie is returning from somewhere, we don't know where. She's wearing overalls, she's covered in mud. Everyone's judging her. There's references to names and characters that you don't understand. So this is the frame story. She's then going to flash back to her childhood and to all the events leading up to her return to this town. So she's returning to Eatonville, and Eatonville is where she spent the majority of the years of her life. When the novel ends, she's around 40 years old. So she returns to Eatonville, and she's recounting her life tale to Phoebe. If you're a visual person, she grows up in West Florida, in the Panhandle. And from there, I won't give away too many spoilers about why she left or how she left, but she makes her way to Eatonville, which is the first incorporated all-Black town in America. If you are a Disney fan, here's Orlando, here's Tampa, so it's in that area. From there, and again, for reasons that we'll find out, she makes her way to the Everglades, where she gets stuck in a hurricane. And eventually, after all that, she returns to Eatonville, and she recounts the tale of all of this to her friend Phoebe. The one element you have to stick with me on in this novel, honestly, it's easy. There's clear-cut symbolism, there's great figurative language. This novel is so easy to analyze. The author really makes it easy. There's nothing subtle or hidden about most of what's going on in the novel, but there is dialect. So you'll remember from the story Sweat, the characters speak in words that are spelled phonetically. So if you just allow yourself to, in your mind, pronounce the words the way they're spelled, you're going to force yourself to speak in a Southern accent. In fact, many people return to her work just to listen and hear the way people spoke back in the day. So if you notice, AH is the pronunciation for the pronoun I. So if I attempt to read this passage, I was with them white chillin' so much I didn't know I wasn't white till I was around 6 years old. If you force yourself to pronounce the words as they're written, you're going to force yourself to read in a Southern accent, which is pretty cool. But if you're a speed reader, used to just reading and devouring page after page, it's probably going to slow you down, and you want to try not to let yourself get frustrated. Just stick with it. You'll get faster. Most of the time, students tell me by chapter 3, they're used to the dialect. The dialect is not the entire novel. It's just when characters speak. You could probably open the novel to a random page, close your eyes and point, And there's a fairly good chance you're pointing to descriptive imagery, metaphor, simile, personification, some kind of figurative language. For example, in the first chapter, the questions pelted her back. The questions are being compared to something physical, like a rock, that could actually hurt her. So we don't know anything about this scene, but we know that the questions people are asking are almost physically painful to her. There's symbolism in the novel. The primary symbol is, revealed in the first couple chapters, it's the pear tree. The pear tree is Janie's first awakening. So it's springtime, she's a teenager, she's sitting under the pear tree every free moment she can get. There's flowers, there's bees, everything's in bloom, and this is her first awakening. And she realizes that when she finds true love, it's going to feel the way it felt for her under the pear tree. And so this is how she defines her vision of success in life. She's going to find that feeling that she felt under the pear tree. If you write about this novel in its entirety, you cannot neglect the pear tree. If you do, it means you're leaving out a very important and necessary part of the novel. Janie's the main character. The main controlling element of her life is this experience under the pear tree. So you can't possibly write about this novel thoroughly without talking about Janie and her epiphany or her vision under the pear tree. Finally, the AP Open question. This is our first novel, and I want you to think about the AP exam. Whether you're taking the exam or not, we are going to have essays at the end of the year that prepare you for the exam. There are 3 essays. One of them is a prose passage, and you'll be familiar with that because you've taken the pretest at the beginning of the year. The second is a poetry passage, and you'll be familiar with that because you've been already analyzing poetry this year. They'll give you a poem or 2 to analyze. The third passage is the open-ended question, and they'll give you a very open-ended theme or literary element or something of that sort, and they'll ask you to choose a work of literature. And I'll just show you now. They'll say from the list below, and they'll say, or choose one of equal literary merit. Don't read the list below. It's a waste of your time. Go into the open question with 3 novels or plays prepared, 3 full-length pieces, either novels or plays. If you do, you can answer any question they throw at you. This is an example of an AP Open question. Many works of literature include scenes depicting parties, banquets, feasts, funerals, and other occasions. Choose a work of literature to explain how such a scene contributed to the meaning of the work as a whole. Think about Macbeth. You probably read the banquet scene where he sees a ghost and he feels guilty. Think about parties if you've read The Great Gatsby, or funerals in The Great Gatsby. You can probably think of several works that fit this question. So I want you to keep this in mind. You're going to be reading lots of novels this year. Don't mentally purge them until the end of the year. They'll come in handy later.